Presentation. Public comment. Public hearing. Closed it. Voted.
We ready to roll?
Sean was going.
I think so.
Sean, just for the record, it's not 5:45, it's 5:25.
We're good?
We should be.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the August the 24th of 2022 meeting of our Regional Commission. And as mentioned before, I guess it's been over 2 years since we've been assembled in this room. And as you can see, it's changed a bit since then. But welcome back. Glad to have everybody here. Guess we will start by pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Patrick, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Ashby, Mr. Butler, Mayor Catlin, Mayor Pointer.
Here.
Mr. Crozier,
Here.
Mr. Curry.
Here.
Mr. Deal, Ms. Donahue.
Here.
Mr. Eggerton,
Here.
Mr. Heisley,
Here.
Mr. Jackson, Mayor Lamar, Mr. McCullough, Mayor Roby,
Here.
Mr. Simple,
Here.
Mayor Sisson, Ms. Taylor,
Here.
Mr. Voorhees, Mr. Weekly,
Here.
Mr. Woods. You have a quorum.
We fly with this one. Yeah, and before we start to, I think Patrick might be going to mention it later, but I wanted to congratulate Mayor Pointer on, we've got an award winner here, a presidential award from the, from the VAPDC. So saw that notice and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any changes to today's agenda? We need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I see no one from the public. Do we have any public comments that you received?
None received prior to the
Okay. Now we will move on to our presentation for today. Kristen Lamb-Peraza, she's going to give us a presentation on the work of the Commission's Mobility Management Program and the Regional Transportation Collaborative. And I guess we're doing this virtually. So.
Yeah, Kristen, you should be able to share your screen if you're able to.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can.
Okay. Thank you for having me. So I am the mobility manager for the region, and I've worked for the commission for about 5 years. And in the last 3 years, we have put into place a strategy to collect comprehensive data about transportation in the region. And some of you may have come across different parts of that program here and there in the community. And so I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of that. I typically jump around a little bit. So if there's anything that I speak too fast on or that you have a question about, feel free to stop me. So many of you guys have already seen the data that is broken down by county, the green version of this. And I just wanted to give you a quick glance at the regional data. What we've collected over the past 40 months, which is 3.5 years, has been a really great glance at what the needs are in the region, how people are using transportation services, and what the reasons for those services are, what's kind of the breakdown of the background information of the client and also their current needs. And so as you looked at your copy of this, I'm not sure if anyone had any questions, but here's kind of the glance of all of the areas compared to one another. We have a significant portion of clients that we serve that are in the older population. And we have a kind of a strong sect of like almost 60% of clients that were born between 1959 and 1940. And those are our most served population. And at a glance, the location breakdown is here on the right, where we have where clients are actually living in what county. This is the current percentage based on the 3.5 year average. And then we have clients also broken down by disability, and that ranges. The state is very flexible on that breakdown of disabilities. It covers a wide range of items and doesn't have to be broken down into specific eligibility categories. So it makes it a little bit easier to leverage funding in that sense for this specialized population. And I thought that the most interesting part of this kind of data set on this first page was that there are a little over half of the clients that we serve are only one-time clients. They interact with our mobility system one time. It's kind of that really intermittent need that pops up for individuals where they don't have that network availability to help them get where they're going, and they need some kind of just quick support. And then we do have a large portion of clients that are also repeat clients. And the interesting part of our data is that we can see that relationship that a client has with us over time. We can glance how things have changed over the years and with their health status that indicates a higher usage or a lesser usage of our transportation supports. This is a glance at some of the breakdown of the calls that are coming in. And we get, right now we have 23,000 plus calls that we've logged in the last 3.5 years. And 28% of those require some kind of a coordination follow-up or a follow-up to provide more information on something that was requested. And so we also have a very small portion of the calls that we receive that are able to be referred for public transit. We take every single call that comes in. We don't screen for eligibility when people call in. So the first thing we're asking is what they need, not where they're from or what their age is. So we try to have the system that's more open, that provides a aspect of accessibility for everyone in the community, not just our vulnerable population. And 3% of the callers that call in specifically for a transportation route question. They're asking for information about the stops and where it picks up and drops off and the timing. Only 4% of the people that we talk to can actually be successfully referred back to public transit. And that's because of the small footprint of the transit system and just the fact that many of the requests that we get are cross-locality requests, and we have very little cross-locality options. Typically, our people that call in for gas cards are usually 3% of the calls that we receive. But because of the recent issue with gas prices, that number has risen to 23%. And you can kind of see this dip and rise over time in this chart. And I know it's not labeled with dates, just meant to give you kind of a glance at how that fluctuates over time. This area here in the middle that dips down to almost nothing is right when the pandemic started and we kind of halted the gas card process. And then this rise here, this high peak, is when the gas prices kind of went out of control recently. And so we had a lot of requests for people wanting gas subsidies. And then the breakdown for the travel reasons, you can see that medical is this dark red color, and it dominates. The reason for medical requests makes up 83% of all of the calls that we receive are for medical travel. And then we have a breakdown of other errands. Critical errands are like going to the DMV, going to social services, getting a haircut, things like that that are necessary to daily life. And then there's a breakdown here also of the destinations of where people are traveling. And Patrick can send this out to the group as well, so you can just kind of compare your data to the rest of the region. So the way that we gathered this information is that we put into place this RTC model, which is Regional Transportation Collaborative. And that's a unique model to this area and also to the state of Virginia. And I like to show people kind of this illustration. Let's see if I can zoom it in here for you. So basically, before 2020, all of these organizations were in their own houses. They were in their own program or own entity. And some of the organizations you can see had communication happening, but not all of the organizations. And if you look across at these green funding sources, you'll see a lot of overlap. You know, some of these organizations were getting money from the PATH Foundation, Aging Together, Voltran. Then we had some agencies getting money from DRPT, Public Transit, our agency, the Community Service Board. And so what tends to happen when you have all of these locations at a local level wanting money from the same sources is it becomes kind of a competition. And there's a lot of issues with inefficiency of spending and overlap of one organization trying to do what another organization is doing. And it's just primarily because the communication isn't happening. And when we looked at all of these organizations and what their goals were, we saw a lot of overlap happening, that we were trying to serve the same populations. The same primary populations were overlapping in most of these organizations. And so what we did was we went through a mitigation process as a region and met with community partners and came up with this concept of this new mobility model, which is called the Regional Collaborative. And it is this overarching model that brings all of the programs together. What we did was we established this firm communication between all programs and this exchange of information, as well as a support system for all these organizations at the level that they need at any time during the year. So we look for funding all year round, whereas before each organization would only source funding at their primary time throughout the year. And so now we source funding all year round. And if there is a grant, for example, from the PATH Foundation or the Culprit for Wellness Foundation, we will come together and we'll talk about that as a group and decide which priorities are the most important, and then put that applicant forward as the person applying for those funds. Instead of 3 of us applying for the same pot of money, now we're submitting one application that's thought through and come to consensus among the group that this is a priority area that needs to be funded. And what we do is when we submit those applications, when we brought everyone together, we created this really great system of being able to be eligible for almost any funding that comes across the board. Because if I'm not eligible as the regional commission applicant, I know one of my programs is likely to be eligible. And so it expanded our eligibility, it eliminated competition, and it created these really strong grant applications. So instead of one organization submitting an application, we're submitting an application on behalf of this collaborative, on behalf of a partnership that's working together, that has proven success. And so we've been really, really successful in receiving almost every grant application that we have sourced over the last couple of years. So in addition to that, we offer a lot of different types of supports for these organizations. We do strategic planning. We help with leveraging resources from staff all the way down to computer applications. And we try to create these non-traditional partnerships as well to engage more parts of the community to support and invest in transportation solutions. So this is kind of, COVID aside, this is not a example of a germ. This is an example of our network that we've created out of this collaborative, where we have so many sectors kind of branching off and providing different types of supports across to the different programs. So for example, when I was speaking about leveraging resources, that's something that we work really, really hard to do. One example of that we've done this year is we sought funding for a marketing position. We work with a lot of small community programs that don't have a budget to pay a marketing staff member. And so what we did as a collaborative was we submitted that funding, obtained it, and then we put into place this marketing position that's available for use by any of our program partners. So they use that staff member throughout the year whenever they need it. So if they have an event coming up, they contact that staff member and they work with them to get their marketing needs met. And so instead of that organization employing a marketing person for X amount of hours or trying to find work for that person all year long, we have leveraged it into a regional position and they have access to utilize that. And we kind of tailor that all the way down from that kind of a large leveraging of a resource all the way down to sharing Zoom accounts so that not every single organization has to pay for and maintain a Zoom account. There's lots of different examples of that. Over the last year, we've leveraged 4 vehicles from the state that were being reappropriated, and we have placed them at the Community Service Board. And those vehicles are used through MOU agreements among 4 different partner agencies to provide transportation, specifically wheelchair transportation, for people across the region. And so we have all these different kind of sectors that we focus on to offer programs whatever they need. And then we also do like a pretty comprehensive strategic planning process every year to meet with all of these organizations to figure out what trends they're seeing in transportation and what their needs might be. And right on the screen now is kind of a glance at what our software looks like. Our software is completely tailorable and adaptable to whatever any program's needs are or any staff members' needs are. So we offer this software to be utilized by all of our partners at whatever level they want. And this is kind of a glance at what I see on a daily basis. These are the things that I'm interested in seeing. But every single staff member sees what is useful for them and only that. And so we run a lot of different programs and facets through this database, facets of coordination. We have several pilot projects that we run. We have one right now that we've coordinated with the Fauquier Free Clinic, where they are submitting particularly vulnerable clients who need to help with accessing and understanding their Medicaid transportation benefit. And they submit that directly through our software. So we don't have to email back and forth. We don't have to call back and forth. They submit a ticket. Our staff get that ticket, follow up with it, talk with the client, put in the information for that would be relevant to the free clinic, and they get a report that automatically goes to them about the follow-up of that client. So we don't have to spend time trying to coordinate our communication. It happens almost automatically across the board. This is a glance at the FY21 funding. This year we brought in over $500,000, or excuse me, FY22 funding. This year we brought in over $500,000 for mobility supports. The majority of the funding does come from DRPT. We get a significant portion, usually around a third, from the PATH Foundation. And that investment comes for transportation and also for the audience that we serve, which is older adults. And then we secure funding, like I said, throughout the year from local grants, and then also any kind of national grants that become available. So at a glance, this is our kind of 3-year map for RTC. We spent the first year really introducing the concept of this model across the region, trying to reestablish partnerships. We implemented several pilot projects, and then we worked really hard to think about strategic planning process and leverage this new concept to leverage participation, I should say. And then for this year, we've been working on expanding our infrastructure, building out that database. The use of that database in Virginia is the first of its kind. It's very unique. We are unique in that we collect all of this comprehensive data. I engage with my colleagues across the state frequently, and none of them collect data at this level. So we are frequently used as an example for DRPT, for the state, and we share this model many, many times across Virginia and across the nation. We've shared it nationwide several times as well. And so we've been building out our expansion and use of that database and trying to build out more services and supports, and then working on trying to recruit volunteers. If you looked at some of your data, you may have seen that volunteers provide a significant amount of travel. We rely on volunteer transportation to kind of make up this brunt of transportation needs that are not satisfied by public transit. And they have provided over 8,000 rides in the last three and a half years, and their equivalent charitable donation over 3-year period has been over 400,000 to the communities. And that's really been contributed by around 150 volunteers. They have provided that much money back to our community. And then this fiscal year, we anticipate that their equivalent donation will be around 500,000. And that's because of the expanded partnerships and working with as many agencies as possible that are utilizing volunteers. And so we work really, really hard to support those volunteer programs, provide a recruitment staff to be able to try and bring volunteers on to get involved with Community Service Board, Rapid Home, Voltran, and low link, and based out of Lake of the Woods. And that is to try and meet as many needs as possible. When we go through the strategic planning processes and look at our data analytically, we're looking at ways to put in solutions that will work. Instead of trying to condense down all of the different needs into, say, 3 solutions, we're trying to build out as many different solutions that meet as many needs as possible. And that we've learned over time that every time that we try to put in a solution into place, you will have someone who has a very unique situation that doesn't necessarily fit into those puzzle pieces that you've laid out. And so we try to keep an open model kind of tailored to that adaptability. So for FY23, we're continuing to expand funding. We received increased funding from the state of Virginia this year. Our total budget for mobility looks to be around $750,000 for FY23 so far. And that is primarily to expand staffing, to add additional employees to help. And those are mostly regional employees that serve the region, that serve regional programs, multiple programs across the region. And we are going to continue to try and build out our stakeholder engagement over the next fiscal year as well. I think that I covered everything that I wanted to cover. I'm sorry, I jump around quite a bit. But if anyone has any questions or anything, please let me know.
I actually have one. You seem to have a very comprehensive database. Looking through this, across all the counties, is always either number 1 or number 2 is general health care.
Yes.
Is there any way that you would be able to break down under that general health care people that would be able to utilize telemedicine or can't think of the right word, but the community health care.
Community paramedicine.
Yes, the community paramedicine.
Yes.
Because if you have that, I would greatly like to have that, because we're moving forward, obviously, with fiber broadband, which may end up being something that programs like this can help offset the cost to individuals that may not need to go physically see a doctor, but may be able to do community or telemedicine. And then also the portion that would be able to use the community medicine.
Yes, I can break that out for you and send that. There is a significant portion of needs that are kind of in that follow-up category and general health care that do not require kind of that physical interaction with a provider. We can also
free up a lot for your other clients.
We can, at any time, our database can be changed instantly. So at any time, if this is something like, okay, you're saying we're going to put in these solutions to bring broadband into the county, to bring services into the county instead of trying to transport people out, we need data on this. What can you do? I can add that at any time to our data collection. So we did that recently with a grant that came across for hearing impaired individuals. We never collected data on hearing impairment before, but because this grant became available, we said we want to get data on this, and we added that instantly to what we do. So it's a very, very seamless, easy process for us to collect more data on that, and I will break down what I have and send it to you.
Fantastic, thank you.
And then we do, through our database, a host of different services. It is not just volunteer transportation. We create this one-stop shop for everybody who calls in, and they can get support for wraparound needs. So what we see frequently through conversations with people and through our volunteers' interactions with people is that they have more than one need. It's not just transportation. Maybe they need a ride to the food closet because they're having some issues with food insecurity. So we have a data, kind of a link to the Community Link program with the PATH Foundation that now covers the 5-county region. And we refer tickets directly over to Yesenia at the PATH Foundation for her to follow up in kind of a case management style, to have conversations with individuals about long-term changes, potential impacts that they can make themselves to some of these needs, and then resources that are available in the community for other needs as well, for food, for handymen, for example. I mean, it can be from anything from a small need to something larger. And then we also have several different types of programs. We have a charitable contract with some specialized mobility providers for people who need transportation that is kind of in hospital bed or in wheelchair that has to go up and down steps or things like that. We also have this gas card, very robust gas card system to provide subsidies for individuals. We have a scholarship gas program for people who have chronic needs that are very unique and fall through the gaps of services that are available. And we have several of those other pilot programs and a lot of other types of tracking that happen through this database. We also use the database to track everything that the RTC does and its impact over the year. So when we are looking at data that we provide on our kind of 3-year data mark or any of this, we are pulling information off of many different types of data that we collect, from what our staff do on a daily basis to things that they do out in the community, their impact, their reach, all of it. So we look at every facet of this mobility program with this database. And so it's not just on servicing individuals, but also on the mobility program as a whole and how it impacts the region.
Mr. Deal, I think you had a question.
Yes, I have an issue. I saw your dental was up there as one of your services. And
Yeah.
I received a message from a teacher here in Culpeper, and I'll read it to you. It says, "Hey, something the community needs, and I don't know if it's something you can help with, is dental care for low-income families. The amount of children in my school with their teeth rotting out of their mouths is disgusting and painful. I could name at least 10 kids just in kindergarten with black rotten teeth that cry that it hurts. These families have Medicaid, but to my knowledge, there is no dental facility that accepts Medicaid." And she says most of it is in the Hispanic community. "Most of the families don't have transportation, so they can't travel to the next county for dental care. There used to be that trailer by Sycamore Park that treated patients for free because they accepted Medicaid. I don't know if there are dentists that can provide pro bono cleaning once a month, or if we can get a dentist office that accepts Medicaid or provides some kind of rides for these families." And blah, blah, blah. But I also sent this over to Lisa Peacock and Marilyn Dunphy, and I just included Patrick here into the conversation as well. But it seems like an issue that perhaps we need to take a look at. And I have empathy from what this teacher is stating.
Yes, definitely. And I do as well. So transportation obviously is in high demand for everything, dental included. And there are a portion of the people that call in specifically trying to get to dental transportation. Every once in a while, we do have kind of a family that wants transportation, and they are included. We have eligible services for families. It's not only for older adults, but obviously the most resources that we have are for older adults. Off the top of my head, there are several dental clinics.
She goes on to say,
Medicaid.
Yeah, she goes on to say that it's mostly the Hispanic kids. And she thinks it's because their parents don't speak English and don't have the resources or knowledge of Medicaid. And she thinks the closest place that accepts is a place in Orange.
Yeah.
There's one in
but it's hard to
Fauquier,
get an appointment.
Yes. There is one in Fauquier too. They're in high demand. All providers right now across the board, not just dental, are in very high demand since the pandemic impacts. There are several places that do take Medicaid, and that new pilot that we put into place with Fauquier Free Clinic for Medicaid tickets was recently opened up to the region as a resource. So it is open for anyone in the region if they have Medicaid and they're not sure how to utilize that benefit for transportation, they can call and get help. We are also currently right now hiring a bilingual person, staff member for mobility coordination who is specifically dedicated to connecting people with their Medicaid transportation benefit. There are several different types of Medicaid transportation benefit. One of them obviously is sort of like a Medicaid taxi, but several of the Medicaid companies, when the pandemic hit, switched their model over to also include a reimbursement model. So if someone can find a ride with a family member or a friend, they can submit documentation to get a gas reimbursement for the money they spent on that transportation. And so we had the staff member specifically dedicated to be able to connect people with that benefit. And it is in our plans to connect with the Spanish speaking population. There are several resources available. And then there is a Piedmont Free Dental Day coming up in Fauquier. That's, I believe, on October 15th, and I can connect you with that specific brochure, but that's free for anyone from anywhere, and we are providing transportation to that event. So if anyone needs transportation to get there, we are going to set them up with one of our volunteer driver programs for that.
I just wanted to mention, they can use their Medicaid transportation to get to the place in Orange, Piedmont Regional Dental Clinic. And they stopped going into the schools during the pandemic, but they used to go into the schools and provide free services to all children, regardless of insurance. They still have that same model at the clinic. So whether a kid has Medicaid or not, they can still get into that school, free school model. And as far as the Spanish speaking community, the recommendation I would give to that teacher is, and I know this is kind of going above and beyond for the teacher, but to have someone at the school, maybe the counselor, contact the Medicaid department at their local DSS and say they need language interpretation when they meet with their worker if their worker's not bilingual. That is something that is supposed to be offered to every non-English speaking person at every government office. And then maybe they would be able to understand better and make those things happen.
There is a second dental clinic in Orange. It's actually in Locust Grove. It doesn't help a whole lot for Culpeper, but there's one in the town of Orange and one at the Locust Grove Town Center.
And Woodside Pediatric in Fauquier also takes Medicaid. So I can work through a couple of community channels to try and get you a listing of any that might be in the area that also see children and take Medicaid.
Thank you.
Great information. Thank you. Does anyone else have questions for Kristen?
I'm wondering, the requests unable to be met, the percentage difference is considerable across. I'm just wondering if is it just no drivers, or are there multiple reasons why the request couldn't be met?
Did you hear that, Kristen? Did we lose it?
Kristen, did you hear that question?
Sorry, I was on mute. I am trying to open that right now, that file up. There are a lot of variances across the counties about what's being able to be met. But the regional average is about between 40 and 50% is unmet. And the majority of that unmet need is due to not having an available volunteer. If you look at this kind of glance at this data set, this is like an example of a calendar of what we see for rides this red and purple here, the volunteers are very busy. There's typically between 8 and 15 rides happening every day. And this is just kind of a quick glance at that. But so the majority of the rides that are unmet are due to not having an available volunteer, which is why we invest so much money and support into trying to build and recruit as many volunteers as possible. And then the breakdown of the other portion is due to the distance, the location that people want to travel. I believe I broke it out here where people wanted to go. You can see that some of them are Prince William, Charlottesville, Fredericksburg, and then even across county and within their own county. It's very unfortunate to see data where we see, especially in Culpeper and Fauquier, where people just want to go literally 2 or 3 miles from their home, and we don't have an available volunteer. That's a really quick ride, and we just can't find someone available. So there is a portion of people that is just due to the fact of the distance being too far, and the timing and how long they prepared ahead of time. Some of these calls that are unmet are also due to the fact that people call maybe a day or 2 days before, and at that time volunteers have already planned out their week and they've already signed up for all of the rides they're going to sign up for, and there aren't any other available volunteers in such a short time frame.
What are you doing to recruit volunteers? What can we do? How can communities be of help to get you more volunteers?
So we partner with 4 different programs right now. That's Low Link, based out of Lake of the Woods, and then Caravan, which covers the 5-county region, Voltran, which is based out of Fauquier, but now covers the 5-county region, and then Rapid Home, which covers Rappahannock County. And what we do is we have employed that marketing person to try and help them streamline their recruitment marketing. We also employ a volunteer recruiter across the region. So they go out to all of those community events and they hand out flyers and try and talk with people. The most success that we've had for recruiting volunteer drivers across the board has been the word of mouth community referral. That has been very, very successful, especially in Fauquier County. And so we have those strategies. We also have a lot of little pilot programs that we put into place to retain drivers and to encourage them to drive more. We have a Donate It Forward program that we ran last year for the first time, where we took about $10,000 that we got from the Path Foundation, and instead of paying the volunteer for their mileage, because a lot of volunteers say they just do it because they want to help their community, they're not looking to get paid. We said any miles that you drive, we'll allow you to donate that forward to another nonprofit of your choice. We had, I believe, 32 drivers participate in that last year, and they donated almost $10,000 across 19 nonprofits that are local to the region. And so that was a really a nice program for them to say. One of the things that we hear a lot when we're trying to recruit drivers is, oh, I already volunteer for my church, or I already volunteer for my Lions Club, so I'm already helping the community. And so this opportunity to donate it forward, they can donate that money back to the Lions Club. They can help their community with this volunteer driving and also donate to an organization that they're passionate about. So that was meant to kind of overcome that barrier. But volunteer driving is a very, very difficult charitable contribution to make. It is almost uncomfortable at times to interact with somebody, a stranger that you've never met, and to help someone show up at their door. You've never met them, you've never been to their home, and take them in your car. It's a personal encounter, and then it's a commitment of time, and it's also a commitment of gas money and wear and tear on your vehicle. So we also partner with the Community Service Board to enable volunteers across those 4 programs to use the CSB vehicles. We provide the insurance payment for most of the organizations that we work with to ensure volunteer drivers with an extra liability coverage to make them as comfortable as possible. And then they can use those vehicles and wheelchair vehicles that are accessible at different points across the 5 counties if they don't want to use their own vehicles. So we have a lot of different strategies that we're putting into place. But from a commissioner standpoint, it would be great just that word of mouth. And then, we can provide materials too that maybe you could hand out to different folks or at different locations that you may see that are appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I do want to commend you, Kristen, for the success of this program. I mean, it's outstanding. I think all all that you've been able to accomplish with you know, putting it out there so well that it's now a model for other areas to try to do a similar thing. So the updates very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we will move on then to the minutes. If you all will look at the minutes from the June 22nd meeting in your packet, and if there's any changes, let me know. If not, we need a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we'll move on to the financial reports. Patrick, we've got three related items here, financial items.
Three items, none of which require any action. So if Madam Chair allows, I'll just move through all three of them in succession. So the first item is item, excuse me, 8A, which is the FY 2022, the final unaudited revenues and expenditures as through June 30th, 2022. Just before I kind of look at those numbers, we did have our auditors from Dunham Camping Roads in this room yesterday, completing their in-house work that they needed, getting the files they needed as part of our audit. So we expect to have that for you all to review in October. The revenues for the year, 98.2% of the amended budget, and expenses were 93.5%. I think as I reported back to you throughout the year, that was sort of in keeping with what we anticipated. We had a couple of projects that we pushed out revenue and expenses into future years, including FY 2023. So that accounted for some of the drop in when we did the budget amendment back in February, I believe. The other thing I would say is that all of the normal, and this is obviously hard to get into this, but the normal kind of drivers, especially on the expense side, payroll and benefits are our primary two drivers. We're very close to what we had anticipated. With staff, late staff turnover, we did have a little bit of a savings on payroll that we came in, I think, 97.4% budgeted. So we expect to have, again, the audited numbers for you within 2 months here for October. For FY 2023, just the first month, that's really just there for your information. I've got the percentages there, but we're, nothing jumps out in July. We've gotten some of the local dues and local funding requests that have come in. Some of those have also come in August. So this is just through July 31st. But again, nothing that I've raised my eyebrows out that, again, with the positions being vacant, at least through now for the regional planner position, we've got the anticipation that our payroll will be well within what we budgeted, as part of the fiscal year. So I'm happy to answer questions on either of those two before going into the summary of just where all the financial accounts stand. Okay, so this is just our twice a year summary of the commission kind of financial accounts. Just as a reminder, the checking and money market are our kind of operating accounts through Atlantic Union Bank, and then we've got two accounts in the Virginia Investment Pool, which the commission opted into in 2017. Kind of scroll. This just going to do a month-by-month breakdown, but I'll scroll into just the chart here that shows kind of where we stand. You can see the money market is where most of our money comes in, and this spike in August, September of last year, PATH Foundation for the mobility management funding for the Regional Transportation Collaborative was $190,000, so that jumped us up there. But as we spend down on that throughout the rest of the year, everything else generally stays in line. Checking and money market are the only two that really kind of adjust throughout the year, have a month-to-month kind of breakdown there. What you don't see here with the VIP, the Virginia Investment Pool, you've got the NAV, which is the liquidity, and then we've got the bond fund. When those were first opened, we put $100,000 into the bond fund, which we've left and allowed to grow up until last year when it started to shrink back down. So we've not made any adjustments between those two fund balances. Total account value just for the calendar year, and then a year-over-year change. I think what this shows is we had a significant increase, largely again due to the PATH money there. We have continue to see an increase, but at much more reasonable levels, I would say, as we got to April, May, June. And then again, just the 10-year account balance history, kind of let you know the general trends of where we are. And I would say from, make sure I'm looking at the right numbers. This is kind of 2014. I would say, I think one of the first things I did when I became the director was ask the commission for the ability to start putting some monies into those reserve accounts. And so I would say that we're at a point now where I feel as comfortable as I've felt. And I appreciate the commission kind of working with us as we've had surpluses in most years. And, you know, look forward to either looking to spend those or to continue to let them sit until there's a time where the commission feels like there's a need to use them. So again, happy to answer a question on those, but that's a February and August report, just so you all are aware of where everything stands.
Any questions? All you money people out there? Okay, terrific, Patrick. Thank you. Now let's move on to your director's report.
Yeah, and if you will, I'll second what Ms. Taylor said at the beginning. I just congratulations to Mayor Coiner. I don't know how many of you in the room or anybody that's watching this or maybe watching it later, but Mayor Coiner has been on the VAPDC board for most of the last decade. He served. He often will tell you, or has told me, that even before his term as vice president and then as president for 3 years, that he was active with VAPDC before that. So it's not just the past decade with as a board member, as I said, but even before that. And I know across the state, a lot of the other directors and elected officials that have been part of the VAPDC just are so appreciative of Mayor Coiner's contributions. I think some of the things that have happened are largely due to his work. VAPDC has a part-time executive director now, and I think that has grown our partnerships with VACO and BML, as well as with the General Assembly. And a lot of that is due to the leadership that Mayor Coiner showed. So it was a worthy winner for the President's Award, and was glad that he could be there and stand to receive it.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't take credit for anything, but we did good work, and it's always a group that does everything. You know how it is. And if you happen to be the president at the time, you get too much credit or too much criticism. That's not really the point. We did good work. We've got increased funding for the regional commissions. That lobbying went in and out, and actually holding our own was good, because for many years, this goes back now to lobbying I was doing back in 07, 08, 09, and 10. But the General Assembly, we were the typical, they picked on us. Balance of budget, they take away money from the regional commissions. It was a small stipend to begin with, but relative to what we got 30 and 40 years ago and the budget at the time, we've really fallen behind. So we have to do a lot of work just to not get cut. And then we actually did get some increase, and that took a whole lot of work, knocking on every single door at the General Assembly. And like Patrick said, we have a part-time, but he puts in about as much time as is needed, whatever that is. So we have an executive director, and this organization, the Organization of Regional Commissions, 21 of us, we've never had that, which made us very different from VML and VACO. We were active ourselves as a group, but we didn't have that point person with staff. So now we have that plus staff. And so the organization is much more viable, much more capable. And so I'm proud of that, but not proud of myself. I'm proud of the organization. We've done good work the last 10 years. Thank you.
And for Jonathan's benefit, and many of the others that you made out, our executive director is David Blunt, who works at the Thomas Jefferson Planning Commission, but has a long history working with the General Assembly. So yeah, if he's not working on Batty Grant for Madison, then he's working on the ABDC stuff. So just a couple other things to highlight. I think as I reported back in June, we didn't at the time have an agreement, but we do have an executed agreement with U.S. Economic Development Administration for our SEDS project. So we've had a kickoff meeting just on the administrative side with EDA on that one. We're going to start to formalize our work with Thomas Jefferson PDC and Go Virginia Region 9. I think similar to what Kristen said about the Transportation Collaborative, really what would benefit us as we go through this process is you all being aware of it, reaching out, especially to anybody that could represent private sector interests or private business through this process. The EDA has a fairly prescriptive you have to have this number of people included and show that you've reached out and not just, it's not going to be just a public, local government, regional commission working together. It needs to be a broad-based team that kind of is developed through that process. So certainly we'll be sharing with all of you additional information that you can use to incorporate people or to ask people if they'd like to participate. I'll use, again, Go Virginia Region 9 has a lot of those connections as well. But we anticipate having a good group that's not just, that shows a good public, private, and nonprofit for our region kind of overlap. We had a good meeting back in late July. If any of you did hear, we had coordinated, this is a long time project for river and stream gauge siting and locations. So we had emergency managers from each of the counties included. We're able to review those and provide feedback to the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, but also to the Rappahannock River Basin Commission as to potential locations and any potential new locations that hadn't been identified. But this is something that most of your boards of supervisors at the county level in the region paid into this 2013, 2014, maybe even before that. VDEM has been very slow, to put it kindly. And it's been stop-start because some of their staffing issues and who's manning it up, but we feel confident that they're finally moving ahead with this and going to get those in place. Certainly a lot of the feedback at the meeting in July was if they're located, if these stream gauges are located further upstream into towards the headwaters, that provides benefit not only for that locality, but also the localities downstream. But that doesn't preclude locations in Orange or further down the Rappahannock and Culpeper as well. So, Jonathan was here. He might talk about the roundtable, but we are going to assist Madison County with their comprehensive plan update. Jennifer Little on our staff is going to be working directly with their county planner on that. So we presented to them last night, and I'm appreciative of the board for agreeing to that. The last thing I want to talk about is just under housing. And first, you may have seen we did have a press release. The first of 3 of the agreements for the PDC Housing Development Program were announced, and that was with Skyline Cap in the town of Madison, and then the 2 projects here in the town of Culpeper, one with People Incorporated, one with Culpeper Community Development Corporation. We're working with, as shared with all of you in February, the February meeting, we've got 3 other projects that we're continuing to work through and anticipate formal agreements for at least one of those fairly soon. The other 2, we're still trying to pin down the potential partners on them being able to commit to the timeline of having units completed by June 30th, 2024. We've talked a lot with Virginia Housing, and it's pretty clear to us that the additional year is there, but really only for if you've got supply chain issues or if you've run into some other problem, not that, oh, we've got an additional year. So the other 3 we continue to work through potential in the future if any of those are not able to commit to that date, that we would come back to the commission with a recommendation for reallocating that funding either to another round of projects, although potentially more likely looking at some of the existing applicants and supplementing any increased costs that they have. And then the last thing I would say is just Rebecca, who made an appearance just a few minutes ago, but she and I have been having a lot of meetings, and I know some of you have been having meetings, been hearing about the end of the non-congregate funding for hotel shelter stays for individuals and households. We've had meetings primarily with Fauquier and Culpeper, but also want to loop Orange in if there's a potential to have staff or anyone else from Orange. Included in your packet, there was just the update from Rebecca in terms of the spending that's been over since COVID-19. I think, as I've shared with many of you, it's been a lot of money that's come in primarily to Culpeper Community Development Corporation, CHAZ, and Community Touch as our service providers. We've had various times where we've probably said to the commission and certainly to our partners that, well, it sounds like the funding's going to be ending, and then inevitably we hear from the state, and then they would hear from the federal government that no, the funding, we've found some more funding, we're going to do it. We are at the point now where there's not additional funding coming to support this and to support the individuals or the households that have been. At times, it's not that we've had people in for 2 years. It's been mostly people that in and out into that non-congregate setting. But we're very confident saying that money is not going to be extended, and I think we're probably down to the last 2 to 4 weeks here What I would say in terms of numbers, and just so that you're aware of this, if it comes to you, is that as of right now in the region, or as of yesterday, the service providers that I mentioned, and that's specifically Culpeper Housing and Shelter Services and Community Touch, are providing support for 74 households, which is up to 103 individuals. And that's across 11 different hotels in Culpeper, Fauquier, and Orange counties. Coordinated Entry, which is a program of the commission, maintains a wait list for those that are either unsheltered or are homeless, or would enter shelter if shelter space was available. As of yesterday, it was 38 households, approximately 57 individuals on the wait list. At least half of those are unsheltered households or individuals, and the calls for shelter continue to come into Coordinated Entry daily. Those numbers also don't include anybody that's being paid for in a hotel by a DSS office or community resources, churches, things of that nature, which we know there are significant numbers that are using those opportunities and options as well. And so basically where we're at when that funding ends is we're back to pre-COVID levels in terms of shelter space in the region, which is 15 beds at Culpeper Shelter here in the town of Culpeper, and then Fauquier Family Shelter, which has 40, has up to 60 beds, but also has some significant obstacles and barriers to entering that shelter, including background checks and other things. They don't take federal or state funding, so they can set those standards, and that's their choice, but it's limited in terms of the overall shelter availability in the region, and it's only going to be hindered further. So I think what I would say is that we're working hard with some of the partners to not only identify long-term solutions such as additional affordable housing, looking at potential for converting hotels or motels into a transitional housing or permanent supportive housing type structure, but also have lots of conversations about what are we going to do for the next 6 months. In Culpeper, especially, and Fauquier has a more informal one, but the Culpeper Winter Heat Shelter has not operated for the past 2 years because of COVID. They usually have 30 spaces in the basement at St. Luke's that they make available usually from about Thanksgiving till late March. If they were to open this year, they would be at a reduced amount of maybe 10 to 12 beds. They've also found that with individuals in hotels, it's a lot of their volunteers that they work with in terms of the churches in the region have found that providing dinner through the hotels is I don't want to say easier, but that's a much simpler and much less puts much less strain on volunteers than operating a shelter. So I share all of that really to make you all aware that it is something that we're talking about, but that I would anticipate would be something that frankly needs to go beyond the commission and our staff and our partners and become a larger discussion, again, in each of your communities, but also region-wide. Rebecca's back here, but I'm happy to sort of answer questions. If there are those, we continue to engage our partners. Usually about every 2 weeks, we're going to check in on what's the status of this opportunity, or how are we going to prioritize those that are either unsheltered now or are potentially soon to be unsheltered. So.
I would just have a request of any of the commissioners that are in counties that we're not really engaged with yet, like Orange, Madison, and Rappahannock, because there are homeless individuals living in your communities. You may just not be as aware of them as Culpeper and Fauquier partners are. But if you could just encourage the engagement, because it is necessary from a regional perspective. It may not be, obviously, Madison doesn't have, the amounts of Fauquier or Culpeper, but, we still receive, a significant amount of calls. And then just my usual plug, that if you are a landlord, know of any people who are renting, willing to rent, whether it be a sublet thing through an organization like People Inc. for permanent supportive housing, or renting to individuals who have barriers that keep them out of, the larger apartment complexes and things like that. So please just have them call the commission's main number, and we will get in touch and see what we can, how we can partner.
Any questions, anyone? Thank you. All right, staff updates. Let's move on to the annual meeting.
Very brief update. I appreciate, as you all know, I think at the last meeting we talked about the rotation being Rappahannock this year. Ms. Donahue has provided a location that we are continuing to try to connect with the owner of. What I would say is traditionally we've done the annual meeting. It's been a late September, sometimes first week of October. Given the timing now, I'm thinking, and also given the Community Services Board is having a 50th anniversary celebration late September. So we're likely to push this to later in October, potentially early November. I do have a list of various statewide meetings, VML, VACO. I know VACO's annual conference is in mid-November, so we will avoid all of those as much as possible. But this is a brief way of saying we don't have a date or a location locked down yet, but we will be transmitting that to you all hopefully soon after this meeting. So that's the brief update as it is.
Did you have anything you wanted to include about the leadership awards, or do we need to remind?
Well, the leadership, what I would say on leadership awards is similar. We've actually done a pretty good job the last year, and probably we didn't at least have the meeting in 2020, but of working through some of our previously submitted nominations. So I would welcome any of you that have anybody that you feel is worthy of a regional recognition, either calling me or submitting. There is a form that we have that's a 3-question form, but we are in need of nominees for that as well. So.
All right, everyone. If you all will recall, we had a draft personnel manual that we reviewed in June. Since that time, the staff has made a few revisions based on internal review, and take another look and ask for adoption of that at this time, unless anyone has any issues with
I
that.
have a couple of questions. You mentioned the Hatch Act. Where is that reference?
It is in section 7.6, which is page. It starts on page 32 of the policies themselves, and I'll scroll down there.
All right, that's all I did. That's that one question. The other is, I find that this is a very comprehensive study that we put together, this manual. And there are a number of things in it that I'm familiar with our personnel manual that might benefit by referencing some of the things you talked about. I mean, is there a way for us to further communication with you, determine how you developed or you gained access to some of these concepts that you have in here?
Sure, and I'm happy. I mean, I can say at this moment that a lot of it came from review of 2 other regional commissions across the state that had policies that I felt comfortable knowing their staff and the work they put into it. Some of it also involved just in my time here, having looked at local policies for various of the towns and counties here as well.
Thank you.
I would so move that we adopt the new personnel policies.
So, second,
Second.
any further discussion?
I just want to say, I think Patrick and his staff have done a good job of going through this and establishing something that's been quite overdue. Done a really good job.
Before the vote, I would say, and I shared this with staff, I would think that within the first year, we'll probably have a lot of things that come up where we're sort of like, okay, the policy doesn't address this. So I would anticipate hopefully having a once-a-year type, and it might even state in there that there's a once-a-year review where we'll bring suggestions back or suggest revisions back to the commission.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on adopting the revised personnel manual. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to new business. We've historically authorized the per capita dues rate and regional housing funding request at our August meeting to enable staff to meet deadlines for local government budget requests. Notice in your packet, the staff recommends maintaining the same request authorized last year, which is 83 cents per capita, and level funded regional housing support for FY 2024. We'll also note that we have held this rate flat for 7 years now. Would suggest reviewing that rate over the next year in advance of the next 2-year budget cycle. I mean, 7 years is a good bit of time. We ought to take a look at that. Are there any questions for staff about the rate?
I actually have one. The reduction in population, is that due to the regional jails or what's?
Yeah, so it's a good question. The reduced population, I want to say, I'm looking at the change here, so that'd be, it varies between the town populations and the counties, but largely it's due, I would say, to the estimates program, because every 2 years we use the census estimates program, and I believe both the estimates program and Weldon Cooper overestimated versus what the 20. So, well, I should say they either overestimated or the 2020 census undercounted. I'll let you determine which of those might be more likely. So,
Yeah.
but that would be where it came from.
All right, folks. So the rate stayed flat this year. Do we have a motion to authorize to move forward?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? I do think we need to take a look at it for next year.
Yeah, it's been how many years now?
7 years.
Yeah.
Population's going up, so the revenue's going up.
So we,
Well, some populations are going up, some populations are going down.
Over 10 years, there's only very few that are going down.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you all going up.
okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Move on to item 11B. This is an action item for proposed amendments to the Commission's remote electronic participation policy, which came in very handy the past couple of years.
So, and if I might kind of give some of the background, and what's put in front of you today is really my take on changes to the code from General Assembly that are going to take effect September 1st. Candidly speaking, I don't necessarily think you need to take action today on this, but I did want to put it in front of you because the commission is one body, and let me actually pull up the new code section for 2.2-3708.3, which takes effect again September 1st. The General Assembly passed this law or this revision to note that, with the exception of local governing bodies, local school boards, planning commissions, architecture review boards, basically your local bodies that can take action and have that authority, that any public body may hold all virtual public meetings. And so that means that the commission would technically be able to hold a meeting where no more than 2 of you could be in a room, but you could all participate virtually. So basically the same way we held a lot of meetings during COVID. So the new policy that's in front of you does include a section that outlines the process for holding an all virtual meeting, the various things in place that would need to happen for that to occur. I say that not so much because I would want commission meetings to be all virtual, but for a body like our executive committee, which typically meets less than twice a year and sometimes just needs to get together to take action on a couple of things in between a commission meeting, that could be a very useful tool to have for the executive committee. The other changes, in addition to the all virtual meeting, really just kind of take into account the things that are changing with the remote participation policy. One of which is that really there's only a need for the greater than twice a year is specific to if you have a personal matter and it's identified with specificity that greater than twice a year or 25% of meetings and that's for any commission meeting. The other ones, I think there's been more flexibility given. So if you've got a permanent disability or a family member's medical condition, then as a commission member, you could make that request for remote participation more than twice a year, again, after September 1st. So that's what's included here is the revisions that really just would keep it in line with the policy within the code, as well as adding that reference to the all virtual meetings. As I was looking at it, prior to the meeting, and I've wrote down a few things. So my thought is that the all virtual option does allow potential relief for the executive committee if it was something that was very timely and time sensitive. And then just speaking, realistically from staff, all virtual is probably easier than hybrid, just because it's a computer and you can sit anywhere to do that. Hybrid, in this office, I think it works okay, but it does put more, there's just more follow-up that's needed that would be done. So we're obviously happy, with our staff here to make any of those things work, but I do think there's definite benefit to the all virtual. But if there's also a desire to kind of wait, so someone said that I'm fine to let this pass till the next meeting as well.
Anyone have any questions, thoughts? Do we need to ruminate on this longer, or do you
I would go ahead and make a motion to go ahead and deal with it now. So yes, to adopt.
Second.
Any further discussion?
And allow Patrick to make any non-substantive changes. I know there's bound to be a couple typos in there through all the track changes. And there's one right there on the bottom of page 1.
Right.
So.
All right. Anything else? All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the remote electronic participation policy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item 11C, we have a request from the Virginia American 250th Commission with potential formation of a regional committee to support that commission. Patrick, can you provide some information on that, please?
And some of you I know have handled this locally, and that is that's great. I know the request kind of came to various methods. I first heard of it through Mr. Curry, who I think received it in his personal email somehow. So that how they disseminated this request, I don't think anybody's really fully understood. But I think at this point, it hopefully has made its way, or at least maybe you've heard of it, either through your tourism director or other staff. What the request that originally originated from Rappahannock, but then that we talked about with our tourism director committee, was creating a regional committee to support the work of the Virginia American 250th Commission. This has a horizon time of 2026. It's, I think not a lot of work that's going to be beginning, but it would basically be partnering with the statewide commission to identify local projects, local potential for using grant funding from the state, then some things of that nature. So my understanding is I think Madison County and Town of Culpeper have both already, agreed to a local committee. We've confirmed with the staff at the 250 Commission that if local committee and have a regional committee, they can overlap. That's not going to reduce anybody's ability to seek grant funding or anything of that nature. So I think we look at it as all the region would be covered. If all the localities want to have their own committee, that would be great too. And maybe this one kind of falls by the wayside, but we have this in place. What we've heard is that potentially in October would be the first grant opportunity. So having in place now would give us that ability to respond to that if indeed that happens. So what I would anticipate also is our staff, Liz Beeling, who's our farm school liaison, but has taken on some of the tourism, working a lot with the tourism directors and others throughout the region as this kind of develops.
It was my understanding, talking to Paige, if I understood correct, that there is a benefit in each community go ahead and having a commission, even if the work is actually rolled up to a regional commission for that, just because when the grant money is passed out, that it'll most likely be passed out X amount, $10,000 or whatever per group. So if we just have one regional group, we may get only one piece of the pie, whereas if we each do it, we may get a lot more pieces of the pie. It could then be coordinated regionally or whatever. But at least that was my understanding. We could get maybe able to get more grant money.
I think that's, yeah.
We do it kind of both ways.
Yeah.
And with these commission, or these committees not being formed, do we know exactly what it is we're looking at doing with this money? I mean, what exactly we're doing to commemorate this?
I don't have a sense yet. I would say that my feeling is if I was looking back at another committee that we formed at one point, we formed the original complete count committee for the census, which ended up not really doing anything. It put the opportunity there should something present itself. I don't think I don't really say negative to forming it.
No,
at this
no.
point.
I don't either. I just wondered what it is.
I think
exactly
it
gonna
may be
entail.
just helping coordinate with whatever the state decides they
Decide.
want to do, statewide. That's the way to distribute that money for the localities to support whatever that effort is.
Celebrate.
Hand out flags.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we are gonna get, I just wanted to.
Patrick, we're gonna regroup in Madison. I had Tracy put that in the packet, I guess, about 2 meetings ago, but I have not taken it to the board yet to pass. But I like what Chris was mentioning, we may go ahead and do it and then still be willing to join along with the regional concept. So I'll let you know if we pass that.
I'd love to receive X $1,000 and hand it over to you to put with your X $1,000 and allow it to happen regionally.
And I think that was, not to speak for Paige, but I think that's probably her thought in terms of, you can get 10,000 at the region, but then you can get 60,000 instead, or you can get a county at a time, so.
Get as much as we can do. Okay, do we have a motion then on this item?
We move forward creating this commission, or pass the resolution, I guess. Is what it is, right?
Yeah, there is a resolution that is, just to go back to them.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, last up, we have a request to execute an on-call planning services agreement with the Berkeley Group, which we have discussed before. Can you review this request? Ben?
I can, and I'll give you just my thoughts on why the timing of this makes sense to seek this authorization from the commission. So we've talked about at various times in the past 5 or 6 years doing a regional kind of cooperative procurement process for planning or technical assistance type things. It's never really come together. I think we've had some localities that have done it on their own or members of other cooperative agreements. So it's never been something we've pursued formally through the commission. But we do have a couple of plan updates coming up that I think would be timely to have this agreement in place with the Berkeley Group. Not that we have something that we've said, okay, we need them to do this work, but with the amount of work that we are doing internally, our staff is pretty much at capacity. The one plan that's going to be likely sooner rather than later is the hazard mitigation plan update. We've done the last 2 hazard mitigation plan updates in-house based on our feedback and our discussions with GDIM and FEMA at the last time in 2018. I think we benefit from having a consultant kind of go through and not just do a standard data update. The other piece is that our staff people that have largely worked on the previous plans, which is myself and Michelle that are continuing to be on staff, have a lot of other things to do besides doing a hazard mitigation plan update. And the new staff that we have coming on board are already spoken for in terms of other projects. So that would be one initially. We've got a couple other things that should we have this agreement in place with Berkeley Group that I'd probably start to talk to them about, just depending on what their costs would be. But I don't intend this to be a staff replacement. I really intend this to be a process where we have a quick way to get work done if and when the need presents itself. So that's sort of the timing here. The other timing is that the cooperative agreement that they had through George Washington Regional Commission, I believe is through the end of this calendar year. So timing for us would enable us to get in there before that expires. So, and I know Rappahannock County, maybe some of you also have used that contract to ride on as well. So it certainly has been used here in the region. And I think Berkeley Group does good work. So
I think the key being this can get done quickly, somebody can come in, it's kind of got the boilerplate back. Saves a lot. Any questions about that? Or if not, we need to have a motion for approval of this request.
I move to approve for staff to execute agreement for non-professional on-call general planning services with the Berkeley Group.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, terrific. I think that's all of our new business. Yes, I think so. All right, regional roundtable time. Both the gentlemen from Colfax. Let's see. Flip the coins.
Chris goes to Mr. Deal before me.
Great.
I
You
defer to
didn't
Joe
speak
on
up
that.
fast enough.
I don't have that choice.
That's
Let's see, a few things we're working on a public pool with the county. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully that moves along. Also, potentially we'll be awarding a contract for a improvement project at our wastewater plant. That's about a $7 million project now that we pared down from a 12 point something bid items. The largest deductive alternate I've ever done in my career. Bid prices seem to be coming in 2x in every direction these days. We did award the 522 Highway Safety Improvement Project contract, and that should start fairly soon. And let's see, other than that, we should have a ribbon cutting for our Right to Record project in mid-September. So we're looking forward to that. Probably a Saturday morning, probably the 9th or the 16th. That's the things I had.
I guess one thing in Orange, we've got a pilot fiber project with Lake Woods Association that they're going to start construction work here in the next few days, and depending on the take rate being high enough, the lake is on an agreement for FiberLink to do the entire lake. So that could be a very large addition to our project there. Everything else, since I'm old and lazy, I will defer to Mr. Voorhees. We'll get to him later, Dave. It's your turn.
Okay, all right. Rappahannock is as exciting as ever. We're still trying to control growth from coming in the borders. It's like we've got the tourism wall up. We're hoping we can maintain, and with the growth going on in Culpeper and Fauquier and everything around us, I think most people that love Rappahannock, which luckily is most of our population, we really want to see what we can do to protect it. So we're working with the Berkeley group on zoning, looking at what we have documented and trying to tweak it to make sure if we end up in court anytime soon, it'll hold up. Fiber, now that we're in the original deal is signed, it's now waiting, hope that you're on the list sooner than others, but you have no idea who's going to go first or how many they can tackle at the same time.
Well, they're trying to tackle Culpeper too.
Yeah, what, 20 counties, I think, in the state, all points. So same old Rappahannock, and we want to keep that way. Help us out.
I'll mention just two things on top of that. We're jumping into the new courthouse process very early, looking at concepts and how it would fit and what it would look like. Hoping construction costs come down before we actually have to pull the trigger and bid it out. That'd be big. Our current courthouse was built in 1833, so this one lasts as long, we'll be in good shape. And I mentioned on our CAO call, hired an assistant county administrator that didn't have to pull from any of you, which is great, both from Spotsylvania. And this person grew up in Rappahannock, and it's a great come home story. So I'm looking forward to having that capacity in the house.
So you're saying there's another opening in Spotsylvania?
First of all, I haven't been in the room before. It really looks nice.
Doesn't
I
it
like
look great,
it a lot. Thank you for getting that done. Just to let you all know, Greg is usually always here, and August has not been a good month for Greg. His family has gone through COVID. 2 deaths, and then his wife had to have an emergency appendectomy. So today he's at his brother's funeral in Florida. That's where he is, and he won't be back until the end of the week. So if anyone wants to say any condolences or send him an email, I know he would appreciate it. He really would. The major project that we're working on in the town is the replacement of our standpipe. We're going to be using ARPA funds and reserve water fund that we have collected. The engineering for this project has been a bear. We have gotten every cost, every estimate. Things have been just so unstable with that. But now that has become so that we can look at it and we can start moving forward on understanding what the actual cost is going to be. We've had costs from $6 to $8 million. It's been unreal. So now we can move forward and we'll be able to see what the cost probably will be and also come to make a timeline for getting that done. We even changed the design. We had voted on and approved a bulb type form, and we had to go back to the cylindrical form that we're using now because of the increase in the cost of the bulb shape standpipe. So that was a major decision for us to do. September 10th is the Orange County Chamber of Commerce Street Festival. And September 24th, this is the first time it will happen in Orange, we're having Orange-tober Fest. And this is a major fundraiser for the Orange Downtown Alliance. Local breweries will be coming in, food trucks, and an afternoon bands and music. And we're hoping it's going to be a really good afternoon for them for a fundraiser. And Charlotte Cole worked with this, and also Zach Spielman at Iron Pipe has really put a lot of work into organizing this and getting the people to participate. So that's it.
Well, I'm gonna defer to John today, for most of this, but just if anybody likes pickleball and have never tried pickleball, we started our 4 beautiful courts at Mountain Run Lake Park last week. And going to be some blue surface with green around the edges. And in the kitchen area, if you know where the kitchen is, it's going to be a light blue, and they're overlooking the lake and the mountains up at the highest point there at the lake. It's going to be gorgeous. So if anybody wants to give that sport a try, that would be a good place to go and learn how. I think you would really enjoy the environment and the scenery there. So, we're right in the middle right now. If you ride by the Gordonsville Airport, you'll see large mounds of dirt and gravel and lots of construction equipment. Our runway has been removed. It's in the process of what both ends are being raised, I guess, and the middle is being lowered. But it's going to be almost perfectly flat. As they assured us, there's almost not a perfectly flat runway in the state. And that's not important, but at least we can see both ends of the runway when you're at the other end of the runway. It'll be 50% wider. It's totally torn up down to the grading, of course. So there'll be a new base put in. I'm not sure there was a base. I mean, basically, I think in the day they just paved over the run of the land almost. So it's going to be quite a bit nicer short runway. It wasn't lengthened some great amount because Gordonsville hadn't magically grown, and the state has to assess whether they allow certain lengths of runways. But for what it is, for a short, small airport, it'll be a primo runway, which is what the airport really is the runway. But we've also got plans in the future for meeting facilities and things that actually already exist there. Beautiful solid glass all the way across the facility, but it's a private residence now. Someone built it personally, and they're going to leave it maybe with a small amount paid, and might go to a nonprofit to Gordonsville after they pass away. They don't have any children. So a private person built their new facility for the future. You have to be innovative when you have a small town. It's not done the normal way. And so it's really going to be a nice facility. We've got a waiting list for hangars. So we'll be able to safely double our hangar space and double our revenue. So it's going to be a really nice, little airport. And I think it'll tie into, we have a benefactor over downtown that's talking about building a beautiful little, almost like the Inn at Little Washington, a boutique hotel downtown. He's looking to spend 15 to 20 million. The only problem is, been talking about it too long. It's starting to bug me, even though, hopefully it'll happen. But obviously the airport would tie in nicely to that, to Montpelier, close by, to the vineyards, to also Keswick and UVA and Woodbury Forest for people that fly in, their kids from Texas and Georgia go to Woodbury. And it's a nice little airport to fly into and stay at the new hotel, hopefully, and do their work. So that's a project right now. We'll find that we've raised 1.7 million to be matched by a grant. I can't believe 1.7 million is not enough for a playground and a pool, but it's a new world we live in. And they say we need 3.5 million. So it's a matching grant that we'll find out in September with Land and Water Conservation and through Department of Conservation and Recreation. But the ultimate decision on that is the Parks Department nationally. Usually the whole thing's handled state level, but the first, a lot of the applications were rejected, a few were forwarded. So the state did that and forwarded it to the federal government, and we made that cut back in May. But the feds will make the call, and when you compete with big cities, you never know if they deem you worthy. We'll find out in September if we have the full 3.5 million. If so, then we'll have over 10 acres right through the middle of Gordonsville with a new playground, with new pickleball and tennis courts, and a 6-lane, 25-meter pool with a diving well and splash pads and the whole thing, and a new pavilion and lots of things. I'm excited about that, but the grant has to be approved for it to actually happen. So that's tentative. Work on the airport now. So those are 2 big projects for a little town. And we didn't use taxpayer money. And that's with buying 4 properties and raising 2 houses. It was raised money and grant. The airport, also, we have no money for an airport. That's never stopped us. If we need to do it, somehow we do it. I get a little tired of begging. I really get a little tired of begging. I call people and beg all the time like I'm running a nonprofit rather than a town. But as long as they keep saying, okay, I'll keep calling. And so the airport was done partly with some money from some of the COVID packages, which technically we utilized to pay police salaries, which we talked to all the big law firms and everybody else and said, that's okay, you can pay police salaries. Well, when we use that for police salaries, amazingly enough, we came up with a couple $100,000 extra money to spend on the airport. It's amazing how that works. And it's so silly that that's not just used, but anyway,
Yeah.
we used it for police salaries, and we used that extra money we found for the airport. So we also spent no Gordonsville money for the airport grant and, well, 2 grants for that indirectly, but so for 40 years, I've been told in Gordonsville that we can't do those because Gordonsville has no money. I'll just say this, we still have no money, but we got it done. So that's all I got to say about that.
Nice job.
Well, a few things up here in Warrenton. We have a new interim town manager. His name is Chris Martino. He's retired county executive for Prince William County. And it will be a substantial change for us and for him. I asked him when he thought about coming from a county that 486,000 residents, a $1.2 billion budget. I don't know how many employees to a town of 10,000 residents and a $36 million budget. See how it looks. He said, I asked him why he retired. He said, well, it's getting pretty political over there in Prince William County. I said, well, welcome to Warren. So we have a few moments ourselves along those lines. But we're really looking forward to having him. He comes with a tremendous background. He's been in public service for decades. He was a CPA, he's a financial wizard. He was their budget manager at Prince William, and then he was their assistant county executive, and he leaves with a tremendously positive legacy. And I think he's going to be a great interim. We've had good interims before, and we're really looking forward to his constructive contribution. Well, our biggest issue on the table is Amazon. I mean, I know that you guys, we all worry about this. And we feel like we are, I'll be perfectly candid, it's kind of like the finger in the dike. We worry that Fauquier County has always prided itself as sort of an agrarian, open, rural place with a wonderful balance, so close to Washington DC. And Amazon just announced it wants to put a 900,000 square foot facility in near Bristow. Our facility that they want for us is relatively small, but there are 2 other locations that could produce perhaps over 1 million square feet of data centers in Warrenton, and that is a challenge for us. We approved an amendment to allow for a special use permit, and this would be the first one. And I think how it goes the rest of it. It is getting tremendous scrutiny from the Planning Commission. It will get great scrutiny from the council. It's getting a lot of scrutiny from our local residents, putting up a ruckus. And I think I was a respondent in the 500 kilovolt case back in 2007 when they were going to put 500 kV lines down Route 66. Dominion is a formidable challenge. And that's most of the issue here, is these above ground transmission lines. There's a big issue, a big matter that they resolved through the state legislature that involved going underground near Haymarket, but that was a complex solution, which I don't think lends itself to our situation, but they are thinking about putting above ground transmission lines along Route 29 coming out of the Wheeler substation, right on into the gateway of Warrenton. You see these power lines coming right into town. And that has got a lot of our residents upset because it will disturb this unique balance that we've tried to achieve over the years. It's going to be a real challenge for us looking forward. And together with that, we are going to engage in the strategic planning process. Yes. And if you guys have had experience with that in the past, I'd be welcome any kind of telephone call to me to see if you have any advice on it. It will be facilitated. It's something we wanted to do for quite some time. But now we've been energized to get it going. That's basically it. And those are fairly 3 major issues for us up there in Warrenton. And how it goes, I know that others are looking at this data center issue in other counties. And I feel that that it's not just Amazon, but this is data center city in terms of Northern Virginia. And I'm very concerned about how Dominion is viewing its power requirements in the Northern Virginia region throughout. And it's going to affect, I think, all of us at some point.
Following up on Mr. Brozer's comments about FiberLink. So our latest report is we have 2,836 customers, active customers. That's 2498 in Orange, but also 98 in Greene County, 18 in Albemarle County, 49 in Spotsylvania County, and a handful in Gordonsville, only 1 in the town of Orange. So that's an amazing number considering, was it a year ago in April, we had 0.
Mhm.
So this thing is real, and there, multiply that by 2 point whatever people per household or 3 or whatever it is, and that's 6,000 folks or so that have internet service because this board said we're not going to put up with no. Still haven't received any VATI money despite their rhetoric. I'm actually, when I get back to the office, we'll hit send on our next attempt to get included in that. But that doesn't matter. Whether we get it or not, we're scheduled to go for more financing so that we can build the Lake of the Woods project and see how that goes. So
We won't tell.
fun.
It's a very unique situation.
Yeah.
Lake of the
I
Woods.
assume they have cable in there, so.
They do.
They do.
Yeah. So the take rate will likely be lower.
Right.
Right
We're
now,
not competing.
Of course.
No,
we do a different service.
TVIT
is what that's for.
Right.
So,
Will that infrastructure allow for a data center like you're talking about over, not that I'm saying we're reaching out for it, but will people approach us for that with that high,
So my understanding of how Amazon and others work on that, with that regard is they would build their own fiber connections to whatever they want to do. I don't think they would look to ride our system. What
smaller things than that?
Yes, so examples might be businesses that require high volume data transmission between themselves and some other entities like video conferencing or CAD design drawings, engineers, medical offices, X-ray, and possibly call centers, which is at a different level in the sort of job structure. So it really gives us some opportunities to recruit different types of businesses that we wouldn't have had access to before. And so that should certainly help Gordonsville, the town of Orange, and the rest of the county with prospects going forward. So that's the fiber side of things. Other things going on, the board saw fit to deal with the expensive cost for employees of providing medical insurance coverage for their families. You all have just gone through the budgets. That's one of those costs that never goes down.
Because you always have an unusually high year.
High year of
medical
claims.
costs.
Every year, right?
Every
It's
year.
unusual.
This is not normal. So the board committed to making us more competitive, and so we were able to start our renewal coming up here, which we're in open enrollment right now, and it takes effect in October, and basically cut $100 a month off of our premiums on the employee side. So hopefully that will keep some folks from deciding they need to go work for Spotsylvania or Albemarle. So.
Green didn't have that conversation.
Well, honestly, everybody was in pretty good shape compared to us, so we needed to make a move there. So that's our big push on our HR side. Proud to say we were selected for the Small Community VACO Award this year. In the small community category, we got the top award for our whole blood project. So our EMS system is capable of delivering whole blood as needed to trauma victims, and submitted that as an award proposal, and we're selected, and we're real proud of it. And we offer that service to all our neighbors if you have a trauma case, and I think that's been communicated to all the EMS liaison folks around. So if we can make a difference in saving somebody's life because we have that resource, we're happy to do that. So just another nice example of how our staff can be innovative and creative and come up with solutions to make life better for our residents. So we're excited about that. So,
Do you want to mention orange juice?
That's our culture initiative, the orange juice. You're putting me on the spot because I got to remember what juice stands for. Joyful, uplifting, innovative, caring, and something else. And this came out of our employee engagement and culture initiative to really try to empower employees and make life at work something everybody looks forward to. And we think it's paying dividends. Folks are really getting along well and communicating better and working across our silos. We're trying to break those down. As we all know, it can be challenging in county government because you really work in completely different businesses than maybe in another department. But we're all one team. And so that's what our Orange Juice initiative is all about. So we're juicing up our activity level to get people together, work collaboratively, and communicate across the organization to build a better work culture.
E for engagement, maybe?
It could be, it could be. I failed the test. I gotta go back. It was on, it was written on the back of the T-shirt. I couldn't read it. So I gotta
So you
go.
gotta send them all to the Orangetoberfest.
Yes.
For the orange juice program.
That's right.
That's right. It is absolutely creating a new culture within our employees. And that is something that there is no question in the past was not good. There had never really been adequate money or resources put towards our employees. And this makes it a huge difference.
Well, hearing this positive reaction from one of my bosses makes me feel pretty good. So
Did you hire a group to?
Well, so a lot of this is homegrown, but we did hire a small consulting group. Some of my colleagues will recognize Zellos. They're a small consultancy that does strategic planning, team building work, training, and they sponsor the LGMA stuff sometimes. So that's why maybe some of them have heard of them. I worked with them actually years ago when I was in North Carolina, and then also in Powhatan, and we brought them in to do a piece of this work. So they are helping us, but a lot of it is homegrown. They helped with some initial. We used the Myers-Briggs framework just as one tool to get people to understand differences and how they can communicate better. You could use a lot of other choices there, but that's one we chose. Yeah, so happy to talk more about it. We're also implementing electronic permitting. We're right in the middle of that. We were supposed to go live last week. The company, Tyler, some of you may know about Tyler. They own the Munis software, and they've just been really struggling to deliver on their schedules because of personnel shortages and all kinds of things. We're still determined to get this thing rolled out no later than Monday. And the employees in planning and building services have been really working hard to kind of keep their heads down and focused. But that'll enable folks to pay all their permits online, to apply for permitting online, to submit plans for review electronically. So at the same time, we'll take stuff right at the counter and help people through it because we want, whether you're a hairy homeowner wanting to build a deck or you're Pulte homes and you want to submit 100 plans, we want you to be able to do it in Orange County in the most appropriate way for you. And this should keep people from having to drive all over the place to come in and pay for a permit. And they can just use their credit card over online. So as an example, so that's underway. So we're keep on keeping on.
Perfect segue. We're filling Ted's pain and Munis, but I think we're right behind you. We're still in phase 1, which is AB. But building permit, I think, comes next year, and they're projecting maybe 12 months to roll that out. So we'll buy stock together in that deal. There are some recreational opportunities. So I know Mr. Deal, Mr. Corner piqued my interest. I heard a grant with Mr. Corner. I don't know if there's any BOF ties to that initiative. We're looking at
Not at this time, but we're looking at everything still. We always need more.
We just recently applied DCR. It kind of starts with them, but everybody has, between
Right.
BOF, there's some open space easement, but there's a recreational component of that. So we have about a 3-acre location on our 180 plus centralized park known as Hoover Ridge that we're looking to do splash pad. Hopefully maybe recreate or learn from some things that was done in Rockwater Park and Culpeper. Pickleball, which I've never played, but maybe I'll come check out your venue prior to us constructing. Have hopefully an opportunity to move our last remaining sport that's isolated, hockey, over to that complex as well. So we're pretty excited about it, still in the early phases, so we can apply for grants. Boards still have to support them and fund them. So, but some good opportunity there. I think we went through a pre-file. It may have been about the same time frame, and I believe September 6th is our grant deadline for that as well. So good luck to you all as well. Happy to report, we introduced last night, I think the first time I showed up on the scene, we were looking for a finance director. And we were able to finally hire a very capable individual that, lo and behold, moved to Madison in February of 2021. But we're excited to have her, Miss Jennifer Warren, who I may bring to the commission at some point. Broadband is, I'll say, underway. It's more of a make-ready type of work happening in the county. Firefly has our main current project. We learned yesterday that DHCD is not going to allow Green, Campbell, Madison to back away from CenturyLink's portion they challenge, which for Madison County will serve the Wolftown Hood area. I personally, some of these telecom companies that haven't been delivering for a while, but each their own, looks like we'll have to sign that MOU. So the remaining portion of the county will be Firefly, both for the FY22 VATI, the upcoming FY23 VATI that will be submitted. We're doing the same thing as last year. We'll be partnering up with regional with Thomas Jefferson. So with David Blunt, who you mentioned earlier, and Firefly, and hoping to score higher, because that's what a regional concept generally does. That will pick up the northern part of the county. Thank you for your earlier insight, Mr. Curry, with Chantel. You know, it was a similar story as you all experienced in Rappahannock County, and left many unserved. Not as dense in that area. I think the FY23 VATI grant, which is points of Etland and Nethers and areas that lead over to beautiful Rappahannock County, it's about 1,100 homes. They project it to be about an $8 million project. The board just supported or approved the letter of support to not to exceed local funding of $400,000. That's pretty cheap for a local effort to do that. So we're excited. We have to get people connected, that part of the county. I think some counties had to maybe talk to Richmond and SEC about landlines. And that area of the county is, I think Verizon had an outage of 10 days. And when you have no cell service, no landline, no internet, I don't know if folks have carrier pigeons, but we're certainly sympathetic to our folks.
It's that area of the county.
Is that, yes. We're very sympathetic to our folks who are in need, whether it's telemedicine or folks just calling and checking on their loved ones. Well, we have a good concentrated retired population in that area as well. We'll take on some renovations. Might have some talk with you two fine gentlemen. I'm not sure how much renovations was involved in Company 23. Unfortunately, we had to pay a little higher price a little over a year ago for our rescue squad. Their license was revoked, which meant they were no longer a rescue or a emergency response provider in the county. We have been, we started in '99 for our EMS efforts. Now we're fully engulfed EMS, not fire at this time. We're not asking for it. But we will be renovating a little over 10,000 square feet. So as you that have been through that know that it's not a new building. So it's engaging the staff. It's a culture thing, right? About how can we make this work? Let's set aside, it's not a new building, but how can we make this work? So those are always fun, but we're going to press forward, limited budget, but we feel confident we'll get that done. And we have our street festival the first Saturday in September. So looking forward to it. I think I hear a lot of folks that kind of shift back and forth. So I'm glad our events are on 2 separate weekends, but I do hear in the community, a lot of folks kind of go back and forth with those 2 lovely events. So other than that, last I'll plug Patrick, you and your team. Again, thank you for being at our meeting last night. The regional commission will again be helping us with our comp plan, a little more involved. Comp plans can be good late night material to fall asleep.
Uh-huh.
We had a lot more narrative, not a lot of that engaging pictures, kind of, say 1,000 words. So we know we're in good hands, and hopefully we'll be kicking that off in September, or at least getting some goal injective, some earlier brainstorming. So that's all I have to report.
As Chris mentioned, we're hoping to partner with the town on our first public pool in Culpeper. It'll be just outdoor and recreational summer pool, but we're working towards that. Mr. Deal covered the pickleball courts at Mountain Run Lake Park. That's a park that we took over from the town, and we're hoping to make some improvements, and that's the first big improvement, and they're gonna be very nice. We hosted a successful triathlon out there just a couple of weeks ago. I think it's been something that's been there for years, and the town used to host it, but it got its biggest turnout ever, and there's a video floating around online somewhere that shows a lot of just fantastic pictures of people riding their bikes through Culpeper and swimming in the lake, etc. So that was good. Our field house at our sports complex should be opening on time in, I guess, about 2 months. And Vatty wise, like Gary and Rappahannock, we've got all points on board. They've got an 18-month project to serve 4,300 homes, and they're sort of underway in terms of evaluating the polls and working with the REC to get rolling. So we're excited about that, and I do think we'll be submitting a second Vatty request. I guess it's due tomorrow, but to try and infill the little bit remaining of Culpeper that would be unserved when all points gets finished. So lots of good stuff going on. I'll end by saying the Chamber of Commerce is hosting a golf tournament on Friday, and a hacker like me somehow is going to play with my chairman, who's fantastic. So wish me luck.
Hopefully the best ball.
Yes. I wouldn't show up if it wasn't.
Okay, I guess, as far as the town of Culpeper, we're building houses like crazy. I guess there's a, 40 units being built right now. You'll see lots of dirt moving around the town. 40 units as you're coming into town. Route 3 is under construction. 21 more townhomes in kind of at the south end of town. And the Planning Commission just approved a site plan for the first phase of the Laurel Park subdivision, which is phase 1 is 173 single family houses. So got a lot of building going on. Right after you go to the Orange Toberfest on the 24th, on the 25th, you can make your way to Culpeper for our Hop and Hog event. It's our barbecue competition, our fall event, our biggest fall event. We haven't had it in a couple of years because of the pandemic. So it's a chance for the regional barbecue places to come out and be in competition with one another. We usually have a professional, like a judge's choice winner, and we also have just people's choice winner too. It's kind of a fun event. So I'm going to try to hit the orange event, and hopefully some people will come out to ours.
Definitely, we've got great fall events around here. And
There's-
our fried chicken festival is October 1st. I'm so into my projects, capital projects, I wasn't thinking about
Yeah.
fun things.
Yeah, there's lots
But our
of
fried
fun.
chicken is October 1st in the Williams.
All right. And I will just wrap up by acknowledging our chief of police just last week celebrated his 45th anniversary with the same department in the town of Culpeper,
Wow.
which is amazing. I don't know of anybody that's done that, and he's still here, still with us. And I just think, I think all of us know the importance of public safety to our communities and making them places that people want to come, that people want to stay. And so people like Chris and his officers and the people he brings on have made a huge difference in Culpeper. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. He's a great accomplishment. Do you have anything you would like to
Just
add?
come up with the E. Empowering.
Empowering.
As long as it's not expensive, right? Is that what that was?
That's
Now
right.
you'll never forget.
Yes, just two quick things. The recreational grant you talked about, one thing that, and for Madison, that I know for Gordonsville, we assisted in the grant writing for Madison, and also for town of Culpeper, we just provided a letter of support. A lot of times those grants look for, especially for recreation, look for regional tie-in. So many of you may not be aware, in 2019, the commission developed an active transportation plan, fairly comprehensive, and a lot of times it's easy to tie in for those grant applications. So for both of those, we were able to provide a letter of support. The other thing, Mr. Deal, I didn't realize this until I saw the news article, but you had mentioned at the Culpeper board that Ruth Updike had passed away back in July, and I just wanted to note that here. Mayor Pointer is probably the only one on the commission that overlapped with Ruth on the commission board, but she was here from 1994, I think, until 2010, served as chair at least once, if not twice. And as I was sharing before the meeting with Ms. Frederickson, if you want to go back into minutes of some of those meetings, you can sort of see her imprint all over the commission at times when there was some turmoil and other things. So I did just want to make that note. She was a great woman. And on a personal note, when I first started here within a year, had some fairly major surgery. And when I got back, Ruth was one of the first to reach out and just say, I've been thinking about you and all that sort of thing. So certainly Culpeper, her legacy at Culpeper stands, but certainly in this room also wanted to make that note.
She sat in the chair right there every time where our esteemed Culpeper town manager. That's her spot. Yep.
Okay, everyone. Well, thank you again for being here. It's great to be back here in our renovated room. Guess we need a motion to adjourn. Okay. All right, everyone. We're adjourned. Thank you.